Part 1. The Quiet Hour. Dr. Margaret Lewis had spent over 20 years studying sleep, but one moment from early in her career still stayed with her. She was sitting across from an older gentleman, early 70s, kind eyes, a bit weary. His name was Robert Jensen. Robert had been waking up every night around 3 a.m. for months, just lying there in the dark. No nightmares, no loud noises, just awake. "I just stare at the ceiling," he told her. "It's like my body thinks it's morning, but it's not. What's wrong with me?" Margaret smiled softly, not out of amusement, but out of recognition. She had heard this before, many times. The truth is, Robert wasn't alone, and what he was experiencing wasn't a mystery. It wasn't a sign of something broken either. In fact, it was something deeply human. Waking up in the quiet hours of the early morning, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., even 4 a.m., is something that happens to a large number of older adults. And while it can feel confusing or frustrating, especially when sleep used to come so easily, there are real reasons behind it. Over the years, Dr. Lewis had uncovered 5 powerful, often overlooked explanations. Each one peeled back a different layer of the aging process: biological, emotional, even social. And when understood properly, each one could offer more than just answers. They could offer peace. This isn't about blaming yourself for not sleeping well. It's about understanding how your body and your life are changing. It's about learning how to listen to the quiet messages your body sends you, even if they arrive in the middle of the night. So let's begin this journey, not just through the science of sleep, but through the lives of people like Robert. People who, once they knew what was happening inside them, found new ways to rest, to cope, and even to appreciate the wisdom in their wakefulness. Part 2. The Melatonin Dip. Harold's 3 a.m. awakening. Harold Cooper had always taken pride in being a solid sleeper. A Vietnam veteran and retired park ranger, he'd spent most of his life waking with the sun and falling asleep not long after it set. Even in his 70s, he kept a gentle rhythm to his days: morning coffee on the porch, afternoon walks through the neighborhood, and quiet evenings reading the paper. But lately, something had shifted. Almost every night, like clockwork, Harold would open his eyes at 3:15 a.m. Not groggy, not confused, just awake. He'd lie there for a while, watching shadows stretch across the ceiling, wondering what had changed. He wasn't in pain, wasn't stressed, and he'd still fall asleep easily at night. So why couldn't he stay asleep? That's when his daughter suggested he talk to someone who specialized in sleep and aging. And that's how Harold ended up speaking with Dr. Margaret Lewis. "Sounds like your melatonin's taking an early leave," she told him with a knowing smile. Harold raised an eyebrow. "Melatonin? Like the stuff in those sleep gummies?" "Exactly," she said, "but your body actually makes its own. It's a hormone that keeps your sleep-wake cycle balanced. When you were younger, you had plenty of it. But as we age, melatonin production drops. By 2 or 3 in the morning, your body just doesn't have enough to keep you deeply asleep." Harold leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "So I'm not broken?" "Not at all," she said. "You're just shifting. Your body's chemistry is changing. It's natural, but there are ways to support it." Together, they made a few simple changes. Harold started dimming his lights an hour before bed. He cut out screens. No more scrolling news headlines at night. He even began taking short walks after dinner to help cue his internal clock. Most importantly, he made peace with his early wake-ups. Instead of lying in frustration, he kept a small book of poetry by the bed. Sometimes he'd read a few pages by the soft glow of a bedside lamp, then drift back to sleep. Other nights, he'd just breathe deeply and let his body rest in stillness, even if his eyes were open. Within a few weeks, Harold wasn't just waking up less often, he was sleeping better. And more than that, he stopped blaming himself for something he now understood: the truth. Waking up at 3 a.m. doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it just means your melatonin needs a little help, and your body needs a little grace. Part 3. A Shift in Time, Charles and the Mysterious Internal Clock. Charles Bennett never thought of himself as a morning person. Back when he was working as an accountant, he was the guy who needed 2 cups of coffee just to survive an 8 a.m. meeting. But now at 68 and newly retired, Charles found himself waking up before the sun, even before the birds. Every morning like clockwork, 3 a.m., awake, fully alert, no dream to shake off, no noise to blame, just the quiet, still hour. And Charles sitting at the edge of his bed, wondering what was going on. His friends joked that it was just old man sleep, but Charles wasn't laughing. He didn't feel tired during the day, just confused. Was something wrong with his brain, his body? It wasn't until he heard Dr. Lewis speak at a local wellness event that things started to click. She explained something called advanced sleep phase, a natural shift in the body's circadian rhythm that happens as we age. It's like your internal clock gets nudged forward a few hours. You start getting sleepy earlier in the evening, and you wake up earlier in the morning, whether you want to or not. When we're younger, Dr. Lewis had said, our body clocks tend to run a little later, but as we get older, that rhythm shifts. If you're falling asleep at 9 p.m., it's no surprise your body might be ready to wake by 3 a.m. Your rest cycle is simply ending earlier. Charles had a light bulb moment. He thought back over the past year, how he'd started eating dinner at 5:30, how he'd doze off halfway through his favorite late-night talk show, how his new, relaxed lifestyle had slowly crept his whole evening routine forward without him even noticing. It wasn't insomnia, it was rescheduling. So Charles made a few mindful tweaks. He started eating dinner an hour later, took short walks after his meal, switched from watching TV to reading a novel with a warm lamp. And some evenings, he called his daughter in Oregon just to chat. Those little social cues helped stretch his evening just enough. And gradually, his 3 a.m. wake-ups faded. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel like he was living with his rhythm instead of fighting against it. Charles learned that aging doesn't mean your clock is broken. It just means it's ticking on a different schedule now. And once you understand that, you can adjust, gently, intentionally, so that sleep feels like an ally again. Part 4. When the Body Speaks. Eleanor and the Quiet Signals of Discomfort. Eleanor Reeves had always prided herself on being healthy. At 76, she still walked to the farmer's market every Saturday and rarely missed her chair yoga class. But for the past several months, something strange had been happening. Every night around 3:30 a.m., she'd wake up, not anxious, not in pain, just awake, fully, stubbornly awake. At first, she chalked it up to aging, but then she noticed it wasn't just the timing. She'd often feel the need to go to the bathroom, or her hip would ache from lying in one position. Sometimes her throat felt dry, or her calf would cramp just enough to make her sit up and stretch it out. It wasn't dramatic, but it was persistent. One afternoon during a regular checkup, Eleanor mentioned it casually to her doctor. That's when things clicked. Her doctor explained that as we get older, our bodies become more sensitive to subtle discomforts, and those quiet signals often show up in the stillness of night. Think of it like a gentle nudge, the doctor said. Your body's not broken, it's just more communicative now. She learned that things like arthritis could cause discomfort after lying still for a few hours, that her blood pressure medication was slightly affecting her hydration levels, leading to more frequent nighttime trips to the bathroom. That reflux could stir her awake if she lay down too soon after dinner. Even small changes in bedroom temperature or lighting could disrupt her already lighter sleep cycle. Eleanor made a few key changes. She adjusted the timing of her medication. She added a cushion between her knees at night to ease the pressure on her joints. She kept a bottle of water nearby and added a humidifier to help with the dry air. And after checking with her doctor, she began a new evening habit, a light snack before bed to keep her blood sugar stable. Within a couple of weeks, her 3:30 wake-ups became less frequent. And when she did wake, she had tools, comfort, hydration, and peace of mind that helped her gently return to sleep. Eleanor realized that waking up wasn't her body failing her. It was her body talking to her. And once she listened, she could respond with care. Part 5. Patterns and Habits. Walter and the Rhythm of Retirement. Walter Hughes had always lived by the clock. 35 years in logistics management will do that to a person. He woke at 6 a.m., commuted, worked, came home, had dinner by 6 p.m., and was in bed by 10:30 like clockwork. Then came retirement. At first, it felt like freedom. No meetings, no alarm clocks. He could eat dinner at 5 o'clock, watch the evening news in his recliner, and drift off whenever he pleased. The house was quiet. The days slowed down. But gradually, so did Walter's internal rhythm. He didn't notice the pattern at first. But one morning, while pouring himself coffee at 3:15 a.m., it hit him. He was waking up around the same time every night, without fail. At first, he laughed it off. "Guess I'm just getting old," he told his neighbor. But the early mornings started to wear on him. He'd feel alert at 3 a.m., but groggy by noon. Naps became tempting, but they only made his sleep more fragmented. The whole thing began to feel like a loop he couldn't escape. It wasn't until Walter's daughter, who worked in wellness coaching, visited for the weekend that he began to piece things together. She noticed his schedule: early dinners, minimal physical activity, and falling asleep during the 7 p.m. news. "You've shifted your whole rhythm forward, Dad," she said. "Your body thinks it's bedtime at 8 p.m., which means it thinks it's morning at 3 a.m. It clicked. Walter wasn't sleeping poorly. He was simply living earlier than he used to. With his daughter's help, he made some small changes. He pushed dinner back to 6:30. He took a short walk after the sun dipped below the trees. He started reading in the evening under bright, warm lighting and resisted crawling into bed before 10 o'clock. The result? His 3 a.m. wake-ups slowly shifted to 5 a.m. Still early, but a big win. He felt more rested, more in tune with his days, and even looked forward to the quiet morning light again. Walter learned something powerful. When the day slows down, the body listens to it. But with a little intentionality, you can gently guide that rhythm into a pattern that works for you. Part 6. Quiet Minds, Restless Hearts. Gloria and the Weight of 3 a.m. Thoughts. Gloria Bennett had lived a rich life. She was 80 now, a retired librarian with a love for gardening, baking, and classic movies. Her days were filled with purpose: phone calls with her grandkids, afternoon walks, and tending to her prized roses. But the nights were different. For the past year, she'd found herself waking up around 3 a.m. Not because of pain or noise or even a full bladder. No, it was her thoughts, quiet ones, restless ones. They crept in slowly, like shadows across the floor. She would lie there, still as stone, staring at the ceiling fan. Memories would bubble up. Her husband James laughing over breakfast, the last words they shared before he passed, a decision made 20 years ago that still tugged at her now and then. These weren't painful thoughts, just unfinished. At first, she assumed something was wrong with her sleep. Maybe she needed a supplement or a new mattress, but nothing helped. Then during a visit to her doctor, she mentioned the early wake-ups. Her doctor, kind and seasoned, listened carefully, then said something that stuck. Sometimes the body wakes, not because it's broken, but because the heart has something to say. That night, Gloria didn't fight the wake-up. Instead, she reached for a small leather journal she kept beside her bed and began to write. A memory, a feeling, a hope for the day ahead. Nothing poetic, just honest. And it helped. Not every night, but enough. Enough to bring a kind of peace to that in-between hour. Enough to remind her that waking up didn't have to mean something was wrong. It could mean something inside her was ready to be seen. The mind, especially in stillness, often becomes a quiet mirror. And what it reflects isn't always anxiety. It can be longing, love, or the ache of things unfinished. For many older adults like Gloria, 3 a.m. isn't just a time, it's a window, a moment when life whispers back, asking to be heard.